2 Samuel chapter 2 in our study. And this overall, I guess, picture of what we're going to be looking at this morning is the house of Saul and the house of David, and some of the things that happened, I think, probably earlier on, relatively, maybe in the middle somewhere there. But what we're going to do is we're actually just going to look at some of these questions and then discuss these things together. In question number 1, it says, after Saul's death, where is David appointed a king? And I'll stop after each question. We'll answer these and we'll discuss. But where was David appointed as king? Yeah, Hebron or Hebron, however you want to pronounce that. And then it says, how does Abner, the commander of Saul's army, respond to this to this appointment? How does Abner respond when David is anointed king? Okay, so Abner goes back to retrieve Ishbosheth and wants to make sure that the lineage of Saul continues in the role of king. Now, why would that be important to Abner, for the house of Saul to fall under that lineage of kingship?
He was kind of second in command, and so I guess he assumed he'd continue at a high position.
Okay, so Mickey points out that, of course, Abner is the commander of Saul's army. He's in a position of command, so definitely there's the perspective that in order to maintain my position of command, I need somebody in my house to stay and rule, right? Yeah, okay, so loyalty could play a card in this, absolutely. And I would agree until we see what happens in some of this story later. I think there's some fluctuation of loyalty as to what it does for you, right? Politics, surprise. Okay. I saw this other comment that said, to make sure that they were like the other countries. When they first asked for a king, they said so that we could be like other countries. Well, other countries' royalty, how does it fall? The leadership would fall to the son of the king, right? So some people pointed out, well, this was just so that they could maintain that picture of how others do it. Well, this is how we need to do it. I think any of those answers can apply, maybe all of them, as to why Abner would insist that Ishbosheth be made king. And of course, I meant to mention this. Hopefully, we all know this, but Abner is who to Saul? Is there a relationship between Abner and Saul? What about family? Is there a family relationship that we know of? I'm just asking because I saw somewhere where it was mentioned that he was Saul's uncle, but I couldn't remember where I came across that at. I read it and I wrote it down. I was like, man, I forgot to write if there was a passage related. I don't know. Maybe that was speculation. I was hoping one of you guys had come across that, but regardless, I mean, there's maybe there's some family tie. 1 Samuel 14:50. So it says, and the name of Saul's wife was Ahinoam, the daughter of Ahimaaz, and the name of the commander of his army was Abner, the son of Ner, Saul's uncle. There it is. Thank you.
Abner's the uncle or Ner is the uncle?
Okay, well,
Uncle or cousin.
depending on how you, okay.
Yeah.
So uncle or cousin, potentially. So we got some family relationship ties there. Thank you for finding that. So lots of things to consider with maybe the reason why, Abner wanted that to fall suit. What do these two families at war eventually do to try and assert their dominion in the region? So this would be in chapter 2, probably around verse 12 through 17 range. Anybody remember what happened there? Okay, competition. I'm glad you put it that way. So we have this. First of all, we have this challenge from Abner. Okay, and I kind of probably looked too much into this. I just found it interesting. ESV says compete before us. Find us some young men to compete before us. King James Version actually says to play before us. To play before us. What might have been popular at this time that people got really riled up about that would have been a spectacle event? Gladiators, right? That's kind of the picture I got with this. This is kind of a gladiator scene, an Olympic sporting event, if you will, us versus y'all. Let's see who's really better. Let's see whose flag flies higher, so to speak. So I kind of picture this, that maybe this is that type of event. Let's find some young men, 12 on 12, have a competition. But this isn't the kind of competition you walk away from. What happened when these on this 12v12? Yeah, so I probably, when I read that, I was like, okay, did literally every single one of them die, or was it that, the crew of Joab overtook the crew of Abner in full? I think I kind of rested that they all wound up dying, all of them, all 24. Did anybody read that differently? Yeah, I mean, and I was trying to wrap my head around, like, was the last two guys just, like, stabbing at the same time? Totally dramatic scene there in my head. But that's the way I took it. Each caught his opponent by the head. Each caught his opponent by the head and thrust his sword into his opponent's side, so they fell down together. Therefore, that place was called Helkath Hazurim, which is at Gibeon. So a couple things to think about here, just with the scene that I found interesting. So I agree that I feel like it's probably some sort of spectacle event or gladiator type event. Why would Joab even accept that challenge, though? Why would that be something he would accept, do you think? It's totally just, I think, speculation, but it's fun to talk about. What I came across was for some of these men in this position of power, it was a point of honor. They could not decline a challenge made. It would show them to be weak or inferior in the eyes of others. Well, he didn't accept my challenge, and so that weakens him somehow. Maybe that's the case. Maybe not. I don't know. So, maybe it was just that point of honor that he was like, okay, I'll accept your challenge. I know what we're made of, and I know that we can, handle this battle or whatever. Again, just kind of speculation, interesting thoughts there as to why they would even accept this. There was also a comment made to the every man his sword was thrust that I thought was interesting, and I don't know if this pertains or not, but it said, such an equal match that they were for one another, and so resolute that neither side would either beg or give quarter. The obstinacy of both sides was remembered in the name given to the place, Helkath Hazurim, which is the field of rocky men. Men not only strong in body, but of constancy. Thought that was interesting. Maybe there's some truth to that, maybe not, but perhaps there was this scene of we're not going to back down, we're going to give it our all, we're not going to give quarter, we're not going to take quarter. I'm dying here for who I stand for. Maybe that's the case, maybe not. But what ensues after this potential gladiator event? What happens after that?
Verse 17 says that the men of Israel were beaten before the servant of David. So it sounds like David's and Joab were the victors, and then you got this fight with how you say that word, Azael, I don't know, chasing Abner and Abner killing him. So that causes lots of problems.
Yeah, and we're going to look more into that. I found it interesting that we kind of go from this spectacle event to just suddenly this next verse reading where it's like and there was a fierce battle. Did everybody just get really mad in the stands watching this and then charge each other? I don't know. But what we do know is that there was a battle, and it said it was very fierce. The battle was very fierce that day. And as Mickey said, Abner and his men of Israel were beaten before the servants of David. So there was this just fierce and overtaking battle that took place. And then, I'm going to get ahead of myself here, but what are the results of what happened there? Sure, let's talk about the number of deaths. Yeah, 360. For you statistics or math people, that's an 18-to-1 ratio. So imagine one man taking on 18. That's pretty intense. It was actually 20 in total. The way it words it, it separates Asahel or Asahel. So we do have a 20 total count that I think we come across there. But what's interesting about the Asahel comment, or Asahel, who is he? Joab's brother, son of Zeruiah, right? David's nephew, however you want to look at that. It says that he was swift as something. You remember what he was compared to? Yeah, swift as a gazelle. I bring that up. I think it's interesting. He's swift as a gazelle, and he is in a just dead pursuit. I imagine this as, it says he does not turn to his left or to his right. He is laser beamed on getting to Abner. And what do we know about, based on what Abner says, what else do we know about Asahel? Is he experienced? As experienced as Abner? As old as Abner, maybe? I see him as this youth, as this, he's not really thinking about all the other factors that take place there. He is just running full head charge. And I say that because of the ending, which is Abner basically saying, turn aside, don't make me kill you. He actually literally says, turn to your side and pick one of these other young men to take the spoil of, which I feel like is another way of saying, pick on someone your own size. This isn't going to end well. But, as we're all aware, Asahel does not turn, and he is impaled by the butt end of a spear. And I can't help but wonder if that has to do with, Abner's probably really tried. I feel like he's probably really tried not to have to kill him. So I kind of see this full charge, and in my mind, I picture Abner just kind of turning side, sticking that spear out probably behind him to stop him, and just Asahel's going so fast that he punctures all the way through his stomach and through his back. So it's pretty intense moment here, and it's also been stated that Abner, he says, how can I lift up my face to your brother Joab there in verse 22? Why should I have to strike you to the ground? He's worried about this, but it's also kind of like self-defense in a way too. And they all know each other. I mean, this is family. So another little side tangent note that I found interesting. I think at least in 2 Samuel just alone, this is one of 4 events that are a stabbing or a puncture through the stomach area within these families. One of 4 events. And I total rabbit hole here, but I thought, that's really interesting. They just have an infatuation with stabbing stomachs. But we have Abner killing Asahel through the stomach. Joab stabs Abner in the stomach. Joab also spills the entrails of Amasa or Amasa, however you want to pronounce that. And then you have the stabbing of Ishbosheth by the sons of Rimmon or Rimmon. Now, if you read that in all the translations, there's 1 out of 20 translations, I think, or commentary even that you have to go to see that they think that was a stabbing in the stomach before they beheaded him. I don't know. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not on Ishbosheth. But I thought that was interesting. There was so much in the family here of just these stabbings and thrust through of stomach areas. I guess that was just their point of contact there. But just some really sad, disgusting stuff going on in this family with this war, these deaths. You got to think about the emotional impact, just the mental impact. What does this do to a family? Well, nothing good. And that's what we see through all this story. As I think about all that, though, and I really do, when I'm sitting down writing these things, I'm constantly trying to put my mind in the perspective of David through others' eyes. I'm really, really trying to put myself in these scenes where this is just what's happened at this moment. What is the outlook on this man? Is he seen as a good man, as a godly man? I mean, there's a lot of killing going on. There's a lot of political sway and just these things. And what would be my view of David at that particular moment in time? And how would he impact me? I try to do that. It gets really hazy and hard to think about that. But the thing is we see these things in different ways even today. But think about maybe some pictures. Just as you read through this, try to do that. I think you'll find it interesting to think about what do you see in your mind. What often is the collateral damage when we are thirsty for prominence and recognition? What is the collateral damage? Okay, so there's a lot that can happen to the families. And we know in this scene, for example, we know these 12 versus 12 young men, that was some collateral damage. They were just expensed for entertainment purposes almost. Of course, we have the 360 on Abner's side and 20 on Joab's side. And I know sometimes we say, well, at least 20 is not that much. It's still 20 lives, right? And if that's 20 lives in your own, potentially your own family, I mean, that's really, really bad. So I felt like it's just, usually it's an unnecessary loss of lives, unnecessary loss of trust, of all sorts of things, even maybe influence that you could have over a family through these internal wars. Just think about how detrimental that is. Any other comments on anything through discussion question 1?
This is several years before we have the divided kingdom completely split. But I think it's showing some cracks in the armor of the unity of the people, for sure. I mean, we already have distinction of Israel versus Judah, and there's some seeds of discontent, I guess you could say, between them. And so it's sort of a foreshadowing of what will be to come.
For sure. Yep. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I always think Saul, David, Solomon. I never think Ishbosheth. So, I mean, he really was a king
Yeah.
for 2 years.
Yeah. And he was really taken care of. I mean, we didn't really talk much about Ishbosheth, but, Ishbosheth was, actually, I think it comes, I feel like he's in one of the later lessons, come to think of it. Maybe I'm making that up. No, that was Mephibosheth, not Ishbosheth. Those names get really close.
In 2:10, it says, Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he began to reign over Israel, and he reigned 2 years.
Yeah.
Only the house of Judah followed David, so
And he was lame, right? He was the one that had both. Mephibosheth. Okay. See? I'm getting my wires crossed here. Ishbosheth was, the reason he took care of Ishbosheth was because of Jonathan, right? Mephibosheth. That's Mephibosheth? Man. Woo! Maybe I'll give Mephibosheth Mickey. I slept a little bit over the last week, just not much. Anyway, okay. Well, we'll get to that. All right. Let's go on to number 2 and discuss some of these. Saul's hatred. Lost my spot. Okay. Saul's hatred for David has been passed on to his family, his army, and his followers. Therefore, those loyal to Saul never show any loyalty to David when he is appointed as king. Instead, what is the result? As we've all discussed, well, the result was war. That's really the blunt end of the stick there, just war. So when religious groups, political parties, or people are at war with one another for long periods, what can be the generational effects? And can you think of any specific examples of this inherited hatred in our culture? That's a big ask. But what say you? When religious groups, political parties, or people are at war with one another for long periods of time, what can be the generational effects? Yeah.
Stories that they've been told that, their entire lives. And, over time, if you hold on to things like that, you kind of blur the lines between what's been sensationalized and what's actual reality.
Yeah.
So the longer it goes, the more things fester, the more the hatred grows. And it turns in, like my brother-in-law, there's a big joke with them being Nebraska fans. And he's like, I don't know why we hate Tennessee, we just do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're just born into it, and that's the way it is. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly, that's really what we see in almost every aspect. If you really boil it down to the root, if you dig into some of these interviews or questions that you can come across with people, and they start getting asked these hard questions of, well, why do you think this, or why do you believe this? It's almost like they don't even know. They're not really sure. Well, I just know there's problems. I just know there was a history there. Well, that's unfortunately that's what we've seen in all sorts of things. We see this in politics, obviously. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We see it in the New Testament with the Jews and the Samaritans.
Mm-hmm.
The parable of the Good Samaritan, hinges on the fact that it's just unbelievable to anyone that this Samaritan person would act this way toward a Jew, and then the Samaritan woman that Jesus encounters is just baffled that he would even speak to her.
Yeah.
Anything to do with her, because she was a Samaritan. And it's amazing to think that there would be it would be so revolutionary for someone to even speak to you because you're Samaritan, but it was.
Yeah. How many times, I wonder, did Jesus have to try to explain the equality between Jews and Gentiles? Through how many parables did he have to go through to get it through their head? Why? Why would it take so much effort? Well, there was this grounded just understanding, this just belief, this is the way it is. We don't associate with them. And they're not accepting, or they're not entitled to the things that we're entitled to, or whatever. So, generational effects, as Nick mentioned, these things that go on for thousands of years, just blows our mind. I think with and of course we covered some of the specific examples, but just even in the religions of the modern day, just think about how many differences there are and why those things exist. And you talk to these people, and it's just because it's the way it's been for years. So these problems are not new problems. Question, or anything else on question number 2? Number 3 says several events occurred during the transition of the kingdom from Saul to David. Abner, the commander of Saul's army, feels entitled to Saul's concubine and gets angry when criticized by Ishbosheth. Abner switches sides and joins David's kingdom. Joab, the commander of David's army, is suspicious of Abner's motives and avenges his brother Asahel's death by killing Abner. Ishbosheth is assassinated by 2 of his own captains. As a sign to David, they will be loyal to him. David has them executed for their capital crime. More tribes come to David to express their loyalty, and he begins to reign in Jerusalem. How would you describe this series of events during this time? Who said chaotic? That's exactly what I wrote down. I was like, I don't have a better word than just chaotic. Like, it just seems like a mess. Chaotic, dramatic, gruesome. I wrote down, quote unquote, always looking over the shoulder. I just feel like this would be a time when you would be constantly like, I know we just talked in private and we're like cool, but as I walk away, I'm keeping an eye on you, kind of thing. And then I wrote Netflix series. So yeah, just wow time. Just so much uncertainty going on. Did someone else have a comment on that, Kyle?
I do kind of wonder, the author makes it a point that Abner felt entitled to Saul's concubine. I'm not sure that the text really.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that either, but
I think that Abner is loyal to Saul's family to the point that this is crushing to him. And I wonder if that really highlights. Looking at it from their standpoint, Abner really seems like a very untrustworthy person. But if you look at it from the standpoint that Abner was so loyal to Saul, he would never do these things.
yeah,
Then it makes Ishbosheth's accusation of him much more like his father's accusations of David.
yeah,
Ishbosheth is filled with terror and fear and suspicion that somebody's trying to take the throne away from me. The exact claim that he learned from his father.
right.
And I wonder if that's not more the image of what's happening here than Abner really was trying to usurp.
Yeah, that's closer to the way I read it and understood it. And I mean, you can go with what you want on that, but it was, again, this is written by someone with an opinion on things, so take it with a grain of salt. Nonetheless, we can think about these things and talk about them, but I would tend to agree with that, Kyle.
Taking that back to the question one, the collateral damage. Saul's dead now, but his spirit's living on.
Yeah,
His attitudes, his thoughts, the way that he deals with things. His children have grown up seeing that, and they're going to walk just like their father did.
yep. Good point.
I just think there's one example here. If David hadn't kind of stepped in, you can see the cycle of revenge and retribution it got bad enough. It could have just gone on. I mean, that's what we see. That's kind of a Jew-Palestinian, it's just a cycle of retribution that continues to escalate. And that's kind of what starts to happen here is
Yeah,
Joab's brother, and then Abner, and then Ishbosheth, and that, what would have happened if David would have said, hey, killing those guys is
Yeah.
not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care what, righteous purpose you thought you had in mind. Anyway,
Yeah.
just the point that those things tend to escalate. Revenge tends to escalate until somebody, after God's heart, steps in.
yeah. Can we just all talk about this for a second? Put our swords at the door? All right, good thoughts. All right, number 4. Quite a bit to talk about with number 4. It says, though David and his nation are having great success, is there Michael or Michael? Michael? Okay. How does Michael, Saul's daughter and David's wife, feel about his celebrations and dancing in front of the ark? We'll stop with that one. Okay, so it says she despised him. And then it says, why do you think Michal might have felt this way about David's celebration? And then how does it seem to impact their marriage? So let's go with the why first, because I found a few different things. Okay, I came across that one. Unbefitting of a king to celebrate in such a way. Anything else? Okay, have you looked into that one? That goes deep. I literally read for like an hour and I was like, no, I'm not even going there. Because it gets into what material and why that would have been worn this way and for what purpose. And it is interesting, but it gets way out there. Some people will even say, well, it wasn't the high priest linen ephod. It was this other linen ephod that they wear when they serve in any religious capacity or worship in any. I don't know. But I know there was something not right about this, obviously. So I came across the same thing. Paul said, wasn't befitting of a king to dance like that. But what else was missing?
Well, the way I looked at it was Michael was acting as her father did. He was always worried about what the others thought of him, and she was worried about what the other people would think of David.
Okay, so the image that David's putting out there, for sure. Okay, this is a king. He shouldn't be dancing in such a way. Also, thinking this linen ephod is the only thing he has on, right? And she makes mention of this. You're dancing like an idiot in front of who? She more specifically says women servants, right? She's pretty upset about. I feel like you're out there dancing naked in front of all these women servants. I thought more along the lines of the befitting, wasn't befitting of a king kind of thing. Maybe there was some just, let's say this. Lesson 10 is about Michal. I think it's lesson 10. And it walks through some series of events and thoughts that I think can help this picture a little bit. So let's think about some of these things with Michal. First of all, when this all started with Michal, she was in love with David, very much in love with David, and that came into a strong role because Saul was able to use that to have a daughter to be able to give to David, right? Now, she also protected David, right? She put the image in the bed, sent him out so that she could protect him. That was, against her father, mind you. So she's protecting her husband against Saul. But then when David leaves, what happens with Michal? Okay, so Saul gives her to this Palti, the son of Laish, when David was gone. And then after some time again, she was retrieved back when Abner sent for her. Okay, which when he pulls her away from that marriage, or from that other marriage, the husband is obviously very upset about that. He's following her, weeping after her, which means she must have, had pretty good influence over him. There must have been a good time for him, whatever. Are there some events in all this, do you think, that could have made Michal bitter against David? Potentially. I think so. I think there's potential there. I'm not going to say that's, send you to heaven or hell, whichever way you want to believe it, but there's potential for bitterness based on what David did to her.
I think there is bitterness, but it's also just striking to me. We're still talking about a descendant of Saul. Saul really struggles to see things for how they are, to see things that glorify God, to see good in people as opposed to bad. And she seems to be doing the exact same thing. And when you look at 21 and 22, especially verse 22, David's response
Yeah.
I will be humble before God. And I wonder if the problem really with her, similar to her father, you're supposed to be the king. You don't look like a king. You
Yeah.
look like a normal person, and that's going to give somebody an opportunity to come in here and take all this away from us.
Yeah. There was a tie into that. I mean, a lot of the articles you'll find are the pride of Michael. And it is talking about it from that perspective of this is who we are. This is the picture we're supposed to fit, and you're not fitting this picture. Definitely, yeah, and my notes lead up to that. But so
Luke, I would give the other, I'm not sure there's a good guy here, and I think maybe we shouldn't be looking for one.
right,
David has already commissioned the ark to be moved incorrectly and got a guy killed. I don't think that wildly dancing in front of it was ever in Leviticus either. Right? That's not,
Yeah.
all this is kind of invented.
yeah,
His reaction, I don't know, I read that differently, like, hey, God chose me, not your dad. Doesn't seem like a very graceful way to answer that. So anyway, I'm not sure there's a good guy.
Yeah, yeah, and
I'm not finding one.
we're heading that way too. there's a lot here into this to think about. I mean, because we do see, I think when you read that, it's kind of like, oh, well, David just justified himself, right? He put her in her spot, justifies what he did because he's king and chosen by God.
Just to give, maybe just put a little bit more twist on that. He does say at the end of that, I will restrain myself. I will distinguish myself in front of the maids. So I don't think it's a kind of a, hey, I'm the winner here, you're the loser. I think it is a God is the one that really matters to me, but Michael, if this is so important to you, it's important to me too. And there's a respect for her at the end of that.
Okay, that's another, yeah, it's true.
I was for David all the way in this one.
Those in favor of David, no, I'm joking. We're not going to put ourselves in their situation right now.
He has all these many wives. That I don't understand. In Leviticus 17:17, God told the kings not to take many wives. And then in one of those chapters, it lists all his wives and all his kids.
Yeah, it's not that
I guess
many.
that was many.
I'm joking. No, you're right. And that was actually another point I was going to bring up is we, along with the bitterness trail that we were kind of following, think about who she was with David in the beginning, his only wife, now coming back into the picture, walking into the house and saying, whoa, who are these other women here? Is there potentially some bitterness from that? And then, did her bitterness stop David from blessing his own home? Because when she met him at the door to let him know who he's supposed to be, that kind of stops the momentum of what was happening there. And did it potentially result in her barrenness? She was unable to have a child. So it's just a lot to think about with Michael's character here. Also, I'm just trying to kind of reiterate the things she's gone through, the influences on her. Michael and Kyle were talking about from her dad. I mean, mind you, this is the influence of a father as well and his leadership. So a lot on her plate, a lot on David's plate that's been going on with the other family warfares and such things. This is really hard to just kind of wrap all up in one cool box and put a bow on it. It's just we just got to think about it and get some perspective. Mike, it does the writer of our study book does go into Michael in lesson 10, and it's a reiteration. A lot of it's a reiteration of what we're already talking about. But I just wanted to bring some of those things out as she gets brought up here at this moment. So, obviously, the rest of the question says, let's see. Why do you think Michael might have felt this way about David, which we discussed, celebration, and how does it seem to impact their marriage? Well, Kyle's point was that he brings up and says, I will distinguish myself. I have seen other sides that say this ruined it. This was a break of trust. She could not support this wild man. Any thoughts on that? I know where Kyle stands on it.
It's interesting that it closes not with David being punished, but with Michael.
Yeah, so that is a valid point. The close of that is that the result is not good for her, more so than David. Man, I really thought I was going to struggle to get through this lesson, but there was a lot of good discussion. The next lesson is Uzzah's view of David. I'll leave it up to Mickey whether he wants to go through Michael again.